Hey there, did I get too close to you? Did I move too quickly with my love? Did you feel insecurity when you could not see the shore? You swayed away when I fixed my gaze on you. You tried to look to some distant star. That's when you said goodbye. That's when you said goodbye. I entered into your sanctuary. I wanted to see beyond your veil. When I wanted to look you in the eye, you pushed my every love away. Was this a show you didn't want to be in? An actress in unemployed, a stage without its audience, a symphony with no string. That's when you said goodbye. That's when you said goodbye. The curtain draws to a close. You let a handsome love slip you by. Did you make an informed decision when you held my hand and said goodbye? That's when you said goodbye. 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 That's when you said goodbye.
Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing? Welcome to Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny, at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Hope everyone's doing well. Excuse me, shifting around in my extremely creaky chair. It gets worse and worse, actually. As evidenced in my last video, if any of you guys saw my last video that I put up just a few days ago, you could hear my creaky chair in that video, which I made for Lollipop Guild. To answer a question that she had, and I thought, hey, maybe it would benefit everybody else as well, so I put it up on YouTube. So there you go. So the song you just heard was by a client of mine called Analog Sync, and the song is called Too Close, and I am right in the midst of mixing this, and so I thought, well, seeing as I'm working on it, I may as well play it for you guys and see what you think. General consensus in the chat seems to suggest that it's a cool song, which it is. It's a very cool song. Analog Sync is my very good friend Pete Lowe from Glasgow originally, but lived in Edinburgh for a very long time. And he went and moved to Hong Kong for about 4 or 5 years. And it was during that period that he started writing songs for this record. He and I have done a couple of records before. The last one we did was a jazz record where we did some covers of some jazz standards, which he paired with different Scottish whiskies. So for each jazz standard, there was a whiskey to go with it. So the idea was that as you're listening to a particular song, you might want to go and try one of these particular whiskies, because he is extremely knowledgeable on the subject of Scottish whiskies and their processing and distilling and all of that stuff, which I don't know very much about, but he is incredibly knowledgeable. So he kind of thought about how these whiskies taste and how they might be accompanied by these particular standards. So that was great fun, and we did that maybe 3 years ago. And he basically gave the whole thing away for to charity. So he had a whole bunch of paintings that he did, because he is just obscenely talented. So he did a whole bunch of paintings, and he auctioned them all off for charity, and then he sold all of these CDs as well, all again for a particular charity that he is a patron of, and he raised an absolute ton of money. But it was great fun to be involved in that, and so kind of this was the I think this is the third record we've done. And it's very different to the jazz standards record, that's for sure. And it's completely not really the kind of thing that I would normally involve myself in musically. As you can tell, there's lots of drum loops, and there's some reverse piano in there. There's some distorted vocals with a delay. Basically, we recorded the delay and printed it, and then we distorted the heck out of it. Then we compressed the heck out of it, and we ended up with this really interesting sound that we've used in kind of like the last... we've used it in, I think it's only the last chorus and the last verse. Yeah, the last verse and the last chorus get this distorted vocal, which was really, really cool. And it's literally just the delay that we then distorted and compressed. So it brought up the volume of this weird effect. It's great fun. So we've already got quite a few people here. All of the regulars are here. Bobby Booth, Sheila, and Jaina, and Bob T, Kyle, Jedrusiak is here. Mike is here from Peace Valley Audio. Good to see you, Mike. And you're all talking about the weather, which is interesting. I think a lot of you have got quite a lot of snow on the ground, but some of you have none whatsoever. Which is, to me, that's really interesting. But I guess, given the size of the United States, that's unsurprising. That one coast would be extremely cold and have lots and lots of snow, and then the other coast it's just kind of vaguely mild for the time of year and raining, And Mike says, I'm regular. Yes, you are. You are indeed regular. But it's good to see you. And Steve Louth is here. Good to see you, Steve. And he says, just popped in to say hello. Steve, good to see you, mate. Thank you for coming. So I thought that today we would talk a little bit about this this song that I'm mixing, just because it's a fun song to mix, and there are some issues that I have to deal with. One of which you might have heard, actually, which is there is some crackle on one of the. In fact, there is crackle on the two acoustic guitars. Excuse me. Which, for most of the song, I can contain. But there's just that one drop section where everything drops out and the guitar just kind of sustains a little bit. You can hear the crackle really predominantly there. And there's not a lot I can do to get away from it other than to cut the guitar short. And I don't want to do that because I think it will just sound weird. So I don't know how I'm going to get rid of the crackle. At the moment, I'm using the Waves noise suppressor, the NS1, which I'm going to show you guys in just a minute if you're unfamiliar with it. By the way, before we actually get started, can we just do a quick audio check? You guys let me know how the audio is sounding. Hopefully there is not a storm of hiss, because I hate hiss. Yeah, Steve Louth, please don't leave yet if you can help it. If you're able to stay, please do. Clear as a bell, says Kyle. Good. Thank you. And Sheila says 5 to 6 inches. I'm assuming she's talking about snow. Ken says good here. Bobby says okay here. Very clear tonight. Sounds great. Good. That's what I'm after, guys, because I ditched the OBS noise gate because I realized probably after about 18 months of doing live streams, but, you know, just sort of since July doing the live streams using OBS, I've realized that actually that noise suppressor screws the audio badly. It's fine when it's just my voice, but as soon as I start doing anything in Studio One, the noise suppressor goes nuts, and it's unlistenable. So after a few tests, I decided to abandon it, which means I have no way of getting kind of room noise or any hums or crackles out of the mic. So what you hear is what you get. But you guys are saying it's good, so that's good. Mike says that noise gate sucks in OBS. It's terrible. Yes, if you've got something like the 192, the Persona Studio 192, you are in luck because you have the fat channel. And you can noise gate on the way in using that wonderful fat channel noise gate, which is brilliant. Jonny uses that extensively, and it really cleans up his studio sound for his streams and for his videos, because he has lots of fans and stuff to keep himself cool. I don't have such things because I live in Scotland. In Scotland, we don't need cooling systems. So, because it rarely gets hot enough to require them. That said, we have had a few summers where the temperature has gone over 100. So, so there you go. Steve says, I'm staying for a bit, just finishing my glass of open whiskey. Nice. To help my gravelly throat. Yes, open whiskey. Open makes some of the finest whiskies out of Scotland. Unless you go to the Isle of Tiree, in which case you're going to get some very, very special malts over there. Some very, very special single malts. My wife and I honeymooned on the Isle of Tiree, which is one of the Outer Hebridean Islands. It's an absolutely gorgeous island. You can walk across it, and you can walk around it fairly efficiently. It's, you know, kind of walking length. Last summer was awesome, says Steve. That's cool. Okay, so why don't we get into this, and then we can take some questions after. But I basically want to show you kind of where I'm up to with this mix, because I just thought it might interest you. And I've deliberately not showed you the Studio One screen and had you listen to it, so that your eyes are not going to deceive you in any way, because I think it sounds pretty good already. And I think I'm probably only about halfway through the mix, and I think it already sounds pretty good. So let's go to Studio One. Hang on a minute, where's my mouse gone? It's there. Yeah, I know. I've been using OBS for what, 6 months. I'm still not smooth and slick like Jonny is with this. So I'm sorry about that. Now you have the benefit also of not having to look at my pretty face and Studio One at the same time. There's only so much the eye can tolerate, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so let's take a look at this song. Now, I'm doing a fair amount of parallel processing in this song. Mostly because, well, it's the kind of song that requires it. There are some dancey, trancey style elements to this mix, and there's a pumping kick drum at the end of the song. So I kind of thought, yeah, that kind of lends itself, and these drum loops, they kind of lend themselves to parallel compression to make them really pop out the mix. So so this is where I'm kind of up to with it, and I'm just going to start at the mix bus over here and work my way across, so I can show you kind of where I'm up to with this mix and kind of how I go about things. So where do I start? I start over here on the mix bus, and I have the Fat Channel Brit Comp which I'm using as a bus compressor, kind of SSL style bus compressor. To me, it sounds more like the Townhouse bus compressor than the SSL, but the Townhouse was basically made out of SSL components. So, but it has kind of their kind of unique twist to it. And this Britcomp sounds a little bit more like that than it does a pure SSL bus compressor. But I really like the sound of this as a bus compressor. And I think it's as good as the one you get from Waves, the Waves SSL bus compressor. I think this one is as good. But I think if I was to do a three-way shootout between this one, the Waves one, and the UAD SSL bus compressor, I think the UAD would win, to be honest. I remember doing a shootout with Dave Vignola back in the day when, I think last year, Dave, Jonny and I used to do a show called That Plugin Show, and the Fat Channel XT was all relatively new, so we kind of did a three-way shoot. And this actually came out very, very good. It's not a slouch by any sense. But I think the UAD kind of won out fairly convincingly. Hold on a sec. Good for you, Mike, doing the laundry. Yes, I love to do that too. It's great fun. She's still she's there. I'll start it again. She's Studios asks, is OBS hard to set up? It's not hard to set up. It takes a little bit of setting up. You'll have to do a fair amount of test videos until you're happy with what you see and what you hear. But I think probably the most complicated aspect of it is the audio routing that you need to do what I'm doing here with Studio One and my voiceover mic and screen capture using OBS. If you're on a Mac, it's easy because you can just create an aggregate device. Job done. You don't need to use any additional hardware. In a Windows environment, no aggregation possible, at least not yet. Maybe later down the line, maybe Windows 11 will allow it. Who knows? But for now, you have to have a second interface to make this work. You can use something called Voice Meter, which is kind of like a virtual ASIO sound card. But to me, because it's virtual, it uses RAM, it uses CPU, it uses processing power that you could have fully devoted to your to Studio One. So that's why I go down the hardware route. Zero latency, and there's no processing power to have to worry about. So basically I have two interfaces. I have my regular interface that Studio One is using and listening to, and then the outputs of that go through my Presonus monitor station, and then I run a set of Q outputs from the monitor station into my second interface, and OBS is listening to my second interface. My mic is plugged into the main regular interface, and so all of that gets summed, as I say, through the monitor station to my other interface, and that's how that works. So there you go. And Sheila says, I don't want a CPU hog. Yeah, well, I don't think Voice Meter is a CPU hog, but it is, it is extra burden, whether you like it or not. All right, so let us proceed, because you guys have been staring at the Britcomp for long enough. So I'm using that as a bus compressor. 30 millisecond attack, and I think this is 300 milliseconds release. Yeah, 0.3, so 300 milliseconds release at a 2:1 ratio. Just tapping the thing a couple of dB, nothing more. And that is going into the Waves J37, which is a great little tape machine. I've used the virtual tape machine from Slate, and I've used this guy, and personally I prefer this guy. I prefer this one because this is the one of the tape machines out of Abbey Road. And so I've heard this tape machine in person, and it sounds awesome. And this actually is a very, very good emulation of that tape machine. And you get 3 different tape types. You get a really old one, and then a sort of late 60s, early 70s tape, and then a bit more modern one. I'm kind of using the bit more modern one right now because it's kind of a dancey song. I don't want to have too much of an old kind of sound to it because it doesn't really need it. And then the next thing that happens after I've processed the mix bus, then I go to work over here. These are my buses. I think I've talked about top-down mixing before, backwards mixing, top-down mixing, upside-down mixing, whatever you want to call it, standing on your head mixing. I don't really care what you call it, but this is kind of what I do. And I've been doing this for maybe 9 years, I think, since I was shown this method, and it not only enabled me to mix faster, but it enabled me to mix with a lot less processing and to achieve the same kind of result. Even if I'm working in something that's very kind of dense texture-wise, using a lot less plugins just kind of like by default, by standard, to me has always made sense since I adopted this kind of workflow. And even if I'm working in something that's very dense, like, I don't know, death metal, which I rarely ever do, or, you know, EDM. EDM I have done a little bit more of. And again, just fewer plugins just really seems to kind of get across the same kind of mix. But to me, it breathes a bit more, and I kind of like that. I don't know whether that's really 100% stylistically correct, but it doesn't really matter to me too terribly much, because I don't do a whole lot of EDM, and I always make sure that my EDM clients that I do have are happy with this way of working before we go any further. So yeah, so I route everything through these buses, and then I usually go for the SSL channel strip, which is what I've got on all of these buses. That gives me my SSL E channel, E console, which is kind of like the SSL 4000 console. I think it's the 4000, or is it the 9000? I can't remember which one it is. But anyway, it gives you that nice SSL sound, which I grew up with when I was much younger. Bobby Booth says Groove 3 has videos on top-down mixing. Yes, they do. Does the old version give you a crackly sound of old records? The old version of what? Not quite sure what you mean there, Beatrice. And Sheila confirms that she's on Mac Pro. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so yeah, so SSL channel, and there's only one channel that's not getting the SSL, and that's the solo guitar, which just has some EQ, which is just basically an upper mid boost, and I cut some 500 because it was kind of sounding a little bit like the guitar player was in a sealed jam jar. That's what it sounded like when I got this particular track. And then we're going into the 1176 compressor, hitting it reasonably hard, getting about 8 or 9 dB of compression. It's an acoustic guitar, but I'm squashing it more than I normally would for an acoustic guitar. So on its own it sounds a bit yuck, but in the mix it sounds, actually it cuts through quite nicely, as you heard earlier. If I actually call up that section of the song, so from about here.
A handsome love slip you by. Did you make an informed decision when you held my hand and said goodbye? That's when you said goodbye. That's when you said goodbye.
So yeah, I'm slamming that pretty hard, much more than I ordinarily would. And as you can hear there, it pumps quite a bit, which is ordinarily not a sound I would go for on an acoustic guitar. But we're getting towards the end of the song. The whole thing is kind of very energetic anyway. So I thought if I can set the compressor to kind of pump in tempo with the kick drum in particular, then this guitar would cut really quite nicely, even if it is a bit yucky in solo. So there we go. And there's some weird routing going on here that I've only just noticed. Why is that going to an acoustic bus? It shouldn't be. It should be going to the main, and I'm probably gonna have to pull this down now. Oh dear, I don't know how that happened. Let's go and balance this up a bit.
I'll slip you by. Did you make an informed decision when you held my hand and said goodbye? That's when you said goodbye. 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 That's when you said.
Okay, so I think I've rescued that a little bit. Somehow I managed to mess up the routing. And I had the guitar solo bus going to the acoustic guitar bus. That's probably why it sounded a little bit extra thin. There we go. You live and learn. Beatrice says, Carlos Santana sound. Yeah, that guitar solo does sound a little bit like that, doesn't it? So I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time kind of bouncing that back up, because I evidently messed that up a little bit. Okay, not to worry. So, moving on a little bit, because we're about halfway through the show. So, yeah, pretty much SSL across the board, and some extra fat channel compression in a couple of places. Oh yes, and I'm using the noise suppressor here to get rid of some of the crackle. And again, I have no idea what this does under the hood. I've done a video featuring the NS1, and I have no idea what it does under the hood. It's just like a single fade, and you just dial it up until it sounds right, until kind of the noise that's there goes away. And it's pretty transparent in that it mostly just deals with the noise without artifacting the main audio, if you like, too much. But if you kind of push it towards 70, 80, 90, 100%, then it really is it is going to affect the audio. It is going to artifact the audio, because you're making the suppressor work extra hard. I suppose it's kind of like a dynamic EQ, and maybe it automatically detects where the noise frequency is and dials it out. I don't quite know, but it's pretty cool. It's very effective, particularly on voiceovers. So if you're a voiceover artist and you've got a little bit of a noisy room, you can use that to dial out some of the noise in the background fairly efficiently. So that's kind of what I say. Bobby says, did you say you're using the SSL-E on the acoustic guitar? Yes, I am using the SSL-E. Guitar could be a bit warmer. Yes, it probably could. Like I say, this is not a finished mix yet. I only started working on this this afternoon. And I kind of kept going, kind of taking breaks regularly, because my kids are at home and my wife's at home as well. So I had to stop every once in a while. So I've been chipping away at this most of the afternoon and most of the evening, and it's now kind of midnight, and I kind of decided I was going to stop before the show. But I'm enjoying working on this so much that I thought I'd kind of share this song with you. Yes, it could do with being a bit warmer. Unfortunately, some of the problem is the guitar was actually sent really, really thin anyway. And there's not a lot I can do when what I get is actually really thin. I can try adding back in low end, but it doesn't really work too tremendously well. Low ends is here. Good to see you, buddy. He says, hello, dear. Yeah, good to see you, mate. Deirdre says, you said that I had 3 settings. I was speaking on the settings. Okay, hang on. Let me find your original question. Oh, you're talking about the tape machine. I think you're talking about the tape machine. It doesn't give you the crackly sound, if that's what you mean. What it does do is it emulates the tape type. Now, if you hit the tape hard, then yes, you're going to get it to distort. So if you really slam into that tape, it will distort. You'll get lots of saturation. But you won't necessarily get that kind of vinyl-y sound, crackly sound that you'd get from a vinyl. But yeah. Would be suggest using Melodyne to thicken it. That's a great suggestion. Bobby says, try using the SSLG with the same settings. I understand the E and G are different consoles. Yes, they are. They are very much so, different consoles. That would ordinarily, to me, be a great suggestion. However, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to stay with the one console, because in a real console setting, that's what you'd have to do. If the mixing room only has the E console, that's what you have. You can't just like go and pull in a G console just to run one channel of audio through that and then patch that back into the master bus of the E to go to the tape machine. Doesn't really work like that in the real analog world. So I'm trying to kind of stay with that idea, that concept. But yes, otherwise I think that's a great idea, because the G console is a little bit more aggressive sounding than the E. The E is quite well rounded and warm sounding, to my ears anyway. So yeah, so we've got a violin in this song that only comes up at the end, that you probably heard, and that's just going through the SSL. So what do we got? We've got some oh, I haven't actually put these in. I should put these in so you at least get to hear these. There's some sound effects that are on this song, and I just completely forgot all about putting them in to the mix. So maybe we should just dial them in. So we've got little, it's only at the beginning of the song, but it kind of sets the scene. So maybe we should dial these in, hey? So let's go back to the beginning of the song, and we can dial these two guys in. I think that'd be quite fun. So let's grab those, and let's see if I can find them on the mixer. Oh, I didn't actually want to do that. I only wanted to select that one and that one. There we go. That's better. Alrighty, so let's get these guys in. Kurt McWright is here. He says, "Hi folks, better late than never, I suppose." Yep, absolutely better. And I think I might actually run over a little bit tonight as well, if you guys are up for it. So could somebody post in the chat how many people are here, by the way? That'd be handy. Thank you.
Hey there, did I get...
Let's bring those in a bit more.
Hey there, did I get to?
Okay, so I'm gonna solo these up so you can hear what they are. $25, $24, $25. Okay, so we're hitting average. Yeah, so we got a little bit of traffic noise and some rain in the background. So there we go. That's what those are. And I completely forgot all about them. So there we go. So, and then we've got claps, which I did, and some shaker, which I did. And then we've got these drum loops and bass, which I haven't really touched yet. And the reverse piano, which you can hear at the start of the song. Reverse piano is very cool. Have a listen to this. Who's it was asking, is that me? No, Beatrice, it's not me. This is my client, Analog Sync. Analog Sync, not synth. Analog Sync. Who is one of my local homeboys. He's great. He's extremely talented. I was talking about him at the top of the show. Glad it was not a stomach rumble. Thanks, Woodbeast. Appreciate it. Vocals kind of sound like a blend of the psychedelic Furs and the alternative band The Flies, and who something got you where I want you. Oh right, cool, yeah. Notice how the brain sounds like the bacon on the grill, says Kirk. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so the reverse piano does sound very, very cool. It's a nice touch by my mate. It's a good idea to put that in. And we got some electric piano, a bit of Wurlitzer electric piano at the start there as well. So there you go. So that kind of helps set up the scene. And then you've got all of these synths, which are, they're very entertaining. There's lots of interesting little sounds going on here. Even right at the very beginning, if I, let's see, let's go and solo up the synth bus. That might be the thing to do here. So you can hear what's going on at the beginning. So those are all very interesting, and it gets even more interesting later on. You get like where is this other one? Oh, this one here in the chorus. So that's weird little loop with the kind of hammered organ and then synth kind of in call and response. Unfortunately, I would really like to have separated those out so I could do a separate EQ on the two sounds. But it was really, really hard to do it without, because they've both got the same delay printed. It meant I would be disrupting that delay if I tried. So I in the end, I just gave up on that idea. And then we've got this guy here on its own. Woodby says ringtones. They could certainly be used for ringtones. And then we're back to that again. I like this one here. If I kind of solo this up on its own. That is somebody drumming on the side of an arcade pinball machine, and then we reversed it. It just makes quite an interesting little effect. It crops up here as well. So yeah, so somebody drumming on the side of a pinball machine, which we then reversed, and it just made a really, really cool effect. So, kind of transports you into the scene, yeah. And you like the outdoor sounds, yeah. I would really like it if these kind of continue through the song a little bit more than they do, but they really only happen at the beginning of the song. I suppose I could duplicate it a little bit more. But yeah. And then we have the acoustic guitars, the solo guitar, and the violin, and that's pretty much it. I should let you listen to maybe this distorted vocal, which is quite interesting.
The curtains almost to my clothes. You let a handsome love slip you by. Did you make an informed decision?
So that's, as I say, that's the delay of the vocal, which we then compressed very, very heavily, brought up the volume, and reversed the delay, so that you can still make out what the words are, but you still get the effect of the weird delay and distortion. AM radio Southern Baptist preacher sounding. That's an interesting idea. Do we have buffering, do we? I hope we don't. OBS is telling me that everything is good, so it's got to be a YouTube thing. If you guys are experiencing buffering, it's got to be a YouTube thing, and you just need to come out and you need to refresh, is what I would suggest. So as you can see, I don't really have a lot going on plugin wise. I have the SPL de-esser, which is awesome, by the way. The Plugin Alliance SPL de-esser, they had it on sale in their I think it was their January sale that I got it for. I think I got it for £20, which is going to be, yeah, around about $25, something like that. And yeah, as I say, and there are two of them. It's like a wee bundle that they do. So you get a dual band de-esser and then just a regular single band de-esser, which is very, very cool. What else have I got? I've got the SPL Attacker as well, which I may well bring into the drum loops at some point as well to add a little bit of extra punch and attack to the transients as well. Yeah, Plugin Alliance de-essers are great. They're fantastic. And I'm very glad to the individuals that recommended them to me. One of those being my friend Pete Woj from Learning to Mix. I was looking for a de-esser that was as good as the one that comes with the Slate Digital bundle, but was considerably cheaper and easier to maintain. And he said, look at this one. So I went and got it as soon as it came on the sale. Lowen says, no buffering in Ohio, just 8 inches of snow. Nice! 8 inches of snow. Good grief. Works great here for Scotland, says Woodbeast. That's hilarious. Okay, we're going to go to questions in just a minute, but basically I wanted to just share with you kind of where I'm at with this mix, which is, I would say, probably about halfway through. I've still got some more kind of detailed EQ to do on this. I've just kind of like done broad stuff at the moment, and I think already it sounds pretty darn good. So this is not going to take me too terribly much longer, I don't think, to get sounding absolutely spanking, which is what you want for this kind of song, this kind of style of music. So why don't we go to your questions. Oh, I forgot to do the question graphic. There we go. There we go. Yeah, let's go to Q&A time. So let's have your questions, guys, on anything you like, basically to do with songwriting, recording, mixing, mastering, the whole process. I'm happy to take your questions for the next sort of 20 minutes or so. It's 10 to 7 Central Time just now, so I'm happy to go on until about quarter past 7. So if you guys are up for that, let's do it. Woodbeast and Bobby Booth are talking about price lists for mixing. Bobby's mixes are fantastic. I heartily recommend him. If you've never checked out his mixes, he's won some of the Studio One Sessions contests. I think he's won maybe 2 or 3 of them, I think. Yeah, I think maybe, Bobby, you've won 2 or 3 of them, have you? And you've done some really, really great mixes. How much RAM do I have running in my system? That's easy. I only have 8 gigs of RAM. I don't have a lot. And that's why I kind of struggle with the Slate stuff. Because really, to maximize the Slate stuff and get the best use out of it, you need to be using a lot of it. Like because it's built around an analog console concept. So ideally you want to be using the VCC and the VMR on every channel of audio that you've got. I can't do that. My computer will shut down if I try. Believe me, I know, because I've tried. It just, it maxes out and I can't do anything. So, I could do what I'm doing with the SSL, the Waves SSL just now, and put it on my buses and do it that way. You kind of get some of the flavor of the analog vibe that you get from the virtual consoles and the virtual mix rack. But really, I was just like, you know what? My system just won't handle Slate. Certainly, I can't really handle Slate and run OBS. There appears to be a bit of a RAM conflict going on there. So I'm pretty much kind of ducking out of Slate at the moment. I'm not really using it. So I think I haven't got there yet, but I think I might, when I get to the end of my 12 months, relinquish my license and give it up, because I can't really do it. Woodby says, you and the wife and kids doing well. Yeah, we're all doing pretty good, thank you. Kids are back at school after Christmas holidays and loving it. They love being at school. Let's see. Because there was a question there about gain staging. Or at least I thought there was. Maybe that message got retracted. Just Bob says, I had a question earlier about tape metal alloy versus standard tape. Which is better? Great question. Absolutely great question. It depends, I think, is the answer. Unfortunately. It depends upon the sound that you're wanting to go for. Metal alloy, for me, to my ears, has always been quite aggressive sounding. And it's definitely brighter than standard tape. To my ears, anyway. So I personally would prefer standard over metal alloy most times, unless I'm wanting something a bit more aggressive. Sheila says, what are your gain staging levels? For a song like this, and for this many channels, which is not massive, it's only about 22 channels of audio, I would gain stage this, and in fact I did gain stage this to -12. Just because there's a lot more channels of audio, and so I need to have more headroom. Particularly for this style of music, because I'm thinking to myself, you know, it's relatively dancey, especially the last chorus is quite dancey. I need to have quite a lot of headroom available for that kick drum when it comes in. So, yeah, somewhere between -12 and -18 for this kind of music. But I think if you're just doing folk acoustic style, small instrumentation style acoustic songs, then you know what, you can probably gain stage much higher than -12. Depends on your channel count, really, to be honest. The more channels of audio you've got, you know, the more headroom you're going to require ultimately, because everything sums down to your stereo master bus. So yeah, so about -12. Ken Moss asks, have you seen the post about MIDI 2.0? How much would that change Studio One? Good question. Some of that I can't really answer. But yes, I have. I'm very, very well aware of MIDI 2.0, mostly because a few years back I was at a conference where MIDI 2.0 was being talked about, and kind of like the implementation and the architecture of it, and how it's all going to work, and how it's going to be different to MIDI that's been around for, you know, the last 30 years or so. And I think it was only maybe 2-3 years back that I went to that conference, and it was really, really good. And talking about the future of MIDI and the language, and how much better, much easier it's going to be to integrate hardware with software via MIDI protocols. So I think maybe there might be a whole range more options for control of DAWs via MIDI. I think that might well be a much bigger part of it. And different controller concepts as well. Like, I know we've had wind synths for a while, since maybe the mid-1980s, when a guy called, was it Gary Steiner, invented the Steinophone, which then became the Iwi, the keyboard company called Akai, picked up Steiner's concept and ran with it, and created the Iwi, which is the electric wind instrument. And they developed an EV, which is an electric valve instrument, so it's like an electric trumpet. And so they developed that idea, and they have been a big part, Akai have been a big part in the development of MIDI 2.0. So watch this space. It's going to be very, very interesting. As I say, some things I can talk about, some things I can't. It's just the nature of the thing, unfortunately. Steve says, how can I lower CPU when using plugins? How can you lower CPU? Use as few plugins as you can get away with. And use plugins that are not massive, that don't require lots of processing power. Like the Slate plugins require a little bit more processing power than the Waves plugins. And Universal Audio would certainly require a lot more. But that's why the Waves, the Universal Audio stuff is DSP based, because you just couldn't run their plugins on the RAM of your computer. It just wouldn't work. So that's why they have a dedicated system of DSP devices, and that's where the plugins are processed, so that your computer does none of that processing work. So if you've got the money to invest in a Universal Audio system, then I would advise go and do that. But I would say, if you're going to do that, before you spend your money, research it carefully. Look at the best UAD options that you can afford and are going to serve you not just now, but down the road as well, into the future. So future-proof yourself if you can afford Universal Audio. A lot of people can't afford it. I certainly can't. But you know, you never know. Maybe one day. But yeah, I would maybe think that way. But if you can't afford UAD, then certainly look at plugin manufacturers that, you know, kind of their plugins don't use a lot of CPU. Like the Brainworks from Plugin Alliance plugins. Those plugins don't use up a lot. The native Studio One plugins don't. Waves, generally speaking, don't use a whole lot. Some of the newer stuff, some of their newer plugins do use a fair amount of CPU. And you just need to pay attention. You can also optimize your computer in the BIOS of your computer. If you are good at computers, go do that. I believe in the Presonus knowledge base there is an article on how to do that for Mac and for Windows if you've not already done it. You can also look at your buffer size and see what's available for the interface that you have. If it's a Presonus interface, you'll do all of that in Universal Control. So I hope that answers that question. And now I can go back down to the bottom of the chat, if I can get it to scroll down. Yes, and also disable tracks you're not using, and also if you're using virtual instruments, render them. And if you are using intensive plugins, commit to the sound as early as you can. Commit to the sound as early as you can and render it and get those plugins out of the way. That's another good option. 23 in the chat, that's pretty cool. Steve says, I use a ToneForge plugin and the CPU usage is quite high. I've never heard of ToneForge, so I can't really help you with that, but that would be disappointing. Bobby Booth says, I'm trying to buy my plugins from Plugin Alliance due to the fact they use very little CPU. Yeah, they are incredibly light on your CPU, considering what they do. You know, there's a really, really nice opto compressor in Studio One that you can get from Plugin Alliance. The Brainworks opto compressor. It's very, very nice. It's fairly LA2A like, but it's got a slightly different flavor to it. And it's just a really nice, smooth, transparent optical compressor. It's lovely. I really like it. And I've used it in combination with an 1176 on certain vocals. Certain acoustic guitars, it works nicely because you get nice smooth compression without really making the guitar sound smaller, which is one of the big issues with compression on acoustic guitars. Is you know, just with just a small amount of compression, you can really begin to reduce the life and the soul of an acoustic guitar quite easily. So something like a nice transparent optical compressor can work quite nicely there. Steve says, I have altered a lot in the PC. Cool. And yes, of course, there are plenty of free ones in Studio One as well. And of course, there's the channel strip collection, the Presonus channel strip collection, which gives you models of the ADL 600 and the ADL 700 channel strips, I think. Neither of which are made anymore by Presonus, I believe. I believe both the ADL units are discontinued. So now they live on forever in Studio One in the Fat Channel now, which is very nice. But before they were in the Fat Channel, they were available as standalone plugins. And I won them in a contest. I won them in a mixing contest, which is nice because I don't do very many contests, but for some reason I really liked the song, so I wanted to mix it, and the only way to mix that particular song was to get involved in the contest, so that's what I did. Bob T says, I'm tossing out a lot of plugins, only the essential along with Studio One. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And it'll also, here's the other thing. Having fewer plugins will make you mix quicker, because you're not going to be searching through lots of lists of plugins. You're not going to, you know, a lot of people categorize their plugins by type. So, you know, they'll have a whole list for EQs, a whole list for compressors, a whole list for limiters, a whole list for this, for that, for the other. And it's just like, okay, I want to bring a compressor into this acoustic guitar part. And, you know, they have to go looking through their list of compressors before they grab the one they want, and then they drag it into Studio One. That takes up time. Now, for me, I'm not one of these people that's kind of like, if something costs me a nanosecond of time, that's a workflow killer. I'm not that kind of person. Really, if losing 1 nanosecond of your time in a mix is a workflow killer for you, there's nothing wrong with Studio One. It's your workflow that's the issue, frankly. You know, for as much as we want to mix fast and we want to get the mix done, get it out to the client and impress the client, and essentially get the best kind of rate per hour, if you like, effectively, by getting the job done quickly, I'm all in favor of that, but not at the expense of the quality of the mix. The quality of the mix comes first. The amount of time it takes comes second. But, you know, there is the tension. For me personally, is yes, I want to get the job done quickly, but I want to get it done really well. I don't want to scrimp anything. I don't want to scoot over anything. I don't want to miss anything, because that means recalls. That means, you know, the client saying, hey, can you fix this? Can you fix that? Can you fix that? And then I have to go and revise the mix and then send that one out. And, you know, I want to nail it on the first mix if I can. You know, or at the very least, I want to nail it on the second mix. You know, do the mix, they really like it, but they have some small little tweaks to change. That's great. That'll take 5 minutes. Change it, send it back. You know, that's and that's it. You know, that's kind of what I really like, if I can. Does that mean that it takes me a little longer? Maybe, you know, a few minutes longer? Yeah. You know, that doesn't matter to me. But anyway, that's an aside. So fewer plugins will certainly help you, because you're not having to search through lots of lists. The more channels, the more headroom is needed. So is there a rule of thumb or a standard that guides you? For example, 8 tracks, 12 dB, 20 tracks, 14, etc. Fewer tracks. If it's like 7 or 8 channels, and I actually have a song that is 7 or 8 channels, I gain stage to -6, because I don't need a ton of headroom. I just, you know, 7 channels of audio? Nah, not going to need it. So why gain stage it to -12 when there's so few channels? Let me just save whilst I'm talking. You know, I personally don't see the point. I can show you actually the song. Hang on a second. So this is the song I'm talking about, and I gain stage this to -6, and as you can see, there is only really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 channels of audio, and then some effects channels. And yes, I did bus, but that's just because that's my system. I could have done this without using buses, but, you know, I kind of wanted to do the vast majority of it on just 3 channels, because I thought, hey, bus mix, it'll be quicker. And I'll broadly get the mix done. And, you know, I'll only have to do little taste things on individual channels, which is what I did. I mean, look, the piano's got nothing on it. The acoustic guitar just has one acoustic guitar has an EQ, the other one has nothing. And the vocals have a little bit of NS1 to reduce some ambient sound, de-essers, and an EQ, and that's pretty much it. And then we've got SSL channels, and that's That's it. And the 2 acoustic guitars are going through the NS1 on the bus. And that's it. It's a really simple song. It doesn't need loads. So I would gain stage smaller track count much higher to like -6. And then the greater the track count, the lower, you know, I'm going to gain stage at. So, you know, for the most part, it's -12. And then when I get past like 40, 50 channels of audio, then I'm gain staging back to maybe -18. And it just gives me tons of headroom. And if I need to bring everything up at the end of the mix because it's, you know, it's not at my target output level for my mix, then I just bring everything up. It's easy enough. So there you go. I hope that helps. Let's see. Sheila is using Studio One stock plugins and McDSP. McDSP plugins are pretty cool. I don't have any, but I know a lot of people that do, and I've heard them on their mixes, and they do sound really nice. They sound really good. And I know that my good friend Warren Hewitt uses McDSP quite a lot. Particularly their compressors, I think he really likes. So yeah, they are rated very highly. As I say, I don't have any, but I would like to, maybe. Steve Lyles says, I got to go let the German Shepherds and the collies out, then bed. Good night. Good night, Steve, and enjoy walking the dogs, and I'll see you maybe next time. Tony Stringer is here. He says, I think I've got much better sound now with the Audiobox i2 and Studio One Artist. Is it in my imagining? It might be. I know you and I were talking about that, Tony. It's possible. The Lollipop Guild says East West has an Abbey Road sound file collection. Awesome. I didn't know that. I wonder how they'd sound together. Good question. I don't know. Bobby says, is that a Mag 2 or Mag 4? It's the Mag 2, I believe. Yes, it's the Mag EQ2. I couldn't stretch to the EQ4 as much as I wanted to. I couldn't really stretch to it. Although Kirk says here, not your imagination, Tony. I'm using the same setup and sounds great. Works well for me. Yeah, the Audiobox I series, the i1 and i2 are really, really good interfaces, actually. And really, really handy for mobile recording. I have an i2 for mobile recording, which I used at Christmas, actually, to do basically to record my daughter's choir. And I basically just chucked up a couple of condenser mics and recorded it in stereo using just the i2, and it's perfect. Did everything I needed, because you know I can't lug my Series 3 mixer around with me everywhere. Doesn't fit in a bag, but I believe you can get a bag for it. All right, so we are 10 minutes over. So I don't see any more new questions in the chat. No? Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll call it a night there, folks. And I will say thank you very much for coming tonight. And I hope your questions have been answered. And I hope you enjoyed the song at the start of the show. It's great fun. I haven't finished mixing it yet, so I will finish it up and maybe I'll let you guys hear the finished mix when I've got to it. But thanks very much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys are fantastic, and I will be doing my normal Wednesday night show with Jonny Guibe. I say normal. Did I really call it normal? Did I really call Songwriting Simplified normal? That's worrying, to say the least. That show we do is anything but normal. It's great fun. So if you've never seen it before, where have you been? It's called Songwriting Simplified, and I do the show with Jonny Guibe over on his channel, the HST Livestreams channel. and we discuss all things songwriting, from history to techniques and styles and approaches and all that kind of stuff. And they're great fun, and Jonny always tries very, very hard to find a question that I can't answer. So, and I'm sure he will be doing exactly the same on Wednesday. So that is 6 p.m. on his YouTube channel. And I'll see you then. And after that, I'll see you back here next Sunday night for another episode of Sunday Night Live. So until then, folks, I'm going to bid you good night. Good night.
Hey there, did I get too close to you? Did I move too quickly with my love? Did you feel insecurity when you could not see the shore? You swayed away when I fixed my gaze on you. You tried to look to some distant star. That's when you said goodbye. That's when you said goodbye. I entered into your sanctuary. I wanted to see beyond your veil.